JFK from 1991. This is a
Hmm.
film directed by Oliver Stone, starring Kevin Costner, Gary Oldman, Jack Lemmon. I mean, the list goes on. I could spend 20 minutes talking through everyone who's in this movie. Like everyone who's anyone was in this movie. And the IMDb plot summary: New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison discovers there's more to the Kennedy assassination than the official story. So, like I mentioned, we did cover this film in our first episode about movies that shaped our view of America. I'll post the link down below to that discussion in case people want more of JFK than what we'll talk about here. So, I'll focus a little more on the Kevin Costner aspect of this than just on the overall film. But, like I mentioned at the outset, I mean, to me, Kevin Costner is like a symbol of America and the goodness that could be in America and our belief in our institutions being above all else, what is most important. And I think this character of Jim Garrison, who was a real person, but the way that they position Jim Garrison in this film and then having it and be Kevin Costner too, to me just is like really just makes this movie work. I don't think any other actor in this role it would have come across as someone who was potentially just obsessive, which he is, and maybe pushing for his own sort of sense of self-importance and celebrity, which maybe the real Jim Garrison, that was why he was doing this. But in this movie, you believe it is a higher cause, and that Kevin, and as Jim, deeply does care about this country, sees the Kennedy assassination as something terrible, that the president was killed, and is willing to admit or understand that yes, there are sort of bad forces at work here, the CIA, the military industrial complex, all these bad actors, but that doesn't necessarily mean that America's finished and America's terrible and America's bad. We as citizens can utilize the institutions, in this case the legal system, to shine light on the truth, and the truth will, as he believes, set us free. And if everyone just knew what was going on, then we can utilize America's constitution and laws in the right way, and fix things and be a better country. So that is what they position Jim Garrison in this film. I think that is what Kevin Costner means to me, and the centerpiece of this movie. I mean, there's a lot of them, but that end sort of basically like 10-minute monologue in the courtroom that Kevin is giving, just
Yeah.
saying a lot of the things that I'm saying, but much more eloquently because it's a script. Just really, again, just like works for me every time, and makes me kind of also believe in it too. He's convincing me, actually, you know what? Actually, maybe America's not so bad, and that we can rise above these things. Yes, we've done bad stuff, but there's still potential, all these things, which is not something I normally believe every day. But every time this movie gets me in that sense too, where like, as Kevin is crying in that monologue, like it gets me as well, like towards the end of it, especially in that brilliantly shot sequence in the very, very end when he like turns basically to the camera and looks dead on to the audience saying like, it's up to you. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's up to me. Like I'm a citizen, I can save this. So I had to put this as my masterpiece. And yeah, what are your thoughts on, I know your thoughts on the film, we talked about it before, but in terms of the Kevin aspect of this and how he works in this movie for you.
Yeah, no, this is kind of the epitome of sort of what he stands for, like what we've been talking about the whole episode. And originally, I too had this movie as my masterpiece. And
Hmm.
then, spoiler alert, I moved it to my wild card
Oh.
because even though it is sort of really underscoring and underlining the Kevin Costner persona and what we love about him and how he stands for the greater good and America and all of that. I do think that he's not really been a part of a movie like this ever, which is a big giant ensemble piece, a historic piece directed by somebody who's at the height of their powers, an all-star cast where Kevin has to go head to toe, head on head, whatever the metaphor is, with like
Yeah.
the greats. I mean, first of all, rest in peace, Donald Sutherland,
Oh,
who
yeah.
passed away this past week as we're
Hmm.
recording this episode. One of the all-time great performances in the steam ceiling scene on the bench as Mr. X. And
Hmm.
so, I think that's why this is a wild card for me because he hasn't done anything like this and he's great in it. Like you said, he's of course underlining his own persona, and the Jim Garrison character could be a stand-in for Kevin Costner. But I think what makes it a masterpiece and a wild card to me is that
Hmm.
it's missed this much grander vision. This is Oliver Stone's movie, who's living in a fever dream of being in the war himself
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
questioning and processing the trauma of being in the war and dealing with his own feelings about America and being obsessive and going down rabbit holes of conspiracy theories and all the stuff. But he's doing it through this movie, and to your earlier point, like I love when people use art to make a statement, but also heal, and do
Hmm.
something. It's a giant experiment. And the fact that this is a hit movie with so much to say, controversial, and still stands the test of time, it's pretty incredible. I think it's probably Oliver Stone's highest high in my mind, but it's
Absolutely.
everyone's highest high. I mean, probably not Joe Pesci and definitely not the toupee, but
Oh, are you so good at this?
I know he's very good. It's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. Right,
It's a
right. No,
lot.
it is. Yeah, but that's the
Yeah,
character. But yeah,
that's the
I see
guy.
what
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But everybody is firing on all cylinders here, and but yeah, the movie falls apart. I think if you don't have Kevin in this role, who's grounds the whole thing, because the movie is manic and obsessive the way Oliver Stone is, and I think
Hmm.
you need somebody who's grounded and emotionally mature, but also struggling and overcome by all of this. And then finally, that amazing scene at the end, like you mentioned, if you don't have Kevin in that, I think the movie becomes a bit of a drag. It probably would.
Yeah, and I think you raise a really good point too about the ensemble nature of this film. Like Kevin knows when to be the center of attention, like the courtroom
Mm-hmm.
scene, but he isn't like stealing the energy or hogging the space from all these other like actors, old and new. When
Yeah.
he's sharing scenes with them, when he's not in the movie, you're not feeling his absence. It just he's even keeled when he needs to be, and then when he is the center, he can deliver that movie star performance and
Right.
movie star persona, but it's not distracting and potentially other. I mean, this obviously is all a lot to do with Oliver Stone as well, and
Right.
and the editing. But I do think another actor in this might have made the movie more unbalanced. I think Kevin balances it out without taking too much of what this movie is because there's so much here and it can't all rest live or die on Jim Garrison's shoulders, but in a way it kind of can because he's sort of like the center stone in this, or if he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work either too much or not enough or seems like he's this weird obsessive conspiracy guy, then the whole movie you can't, there's no one to rally behind as an audience member. Like he is your surrogate too because again, like
Yep.
you, it is playing to this hegemonically dominant view that America is great in what it says, and yeah, there's some problems, but that's what the audience is coming at it from. So
Right.
you can't turn them off too much. I mean, you have to get them excited at the end when it's like, yeah, Jim Garrison, yeah, I believe in what you're doing. The truth is important and justice is important, and you're fighting for that, and that's what makes it powerful.
And I think to build on that, what cements, I guess, Kevin Costner's legacy through this movie is that for a long time, a lot of people who watch this movie, including myself for the first time, walk out feeling this is what happened. And what happens is very much tied to Jim Garrison's quest for truth and what he stands for.
Hmm.
And guess who's playing that? It's Kevin Costner. So it sort of cements this whole legacy that we've been talking about this whole episode of
Hmm.
seeing the greater good and being hopeful and fighting for the truth and all of that. So in many ways this movie kind of almost catapults him and his persona in a to a different level.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Which is why for me, like, not only it is my like perfect Kevin Costner like masterpiece performance,
Yeah.
and I definitely see why too for you on the wild card side of things. It is a different thing that he's done. It hasn't
Yeah.
really come back to this again. And I think it could have been like I was saying earlier, the fact that Dances with Wolves was such a huge hit
Right.
commercially and critically that he's like, okay, well, I don't need to be working with other top tier directors. I am one now. So I don't need to
Yes.
be in an Oliver Stone picture anymore. I'm going to make The Postman. Like that I think is you can read it as arrogance, but at the same time, like how could you not? Like you just won an Academy Award as best director on
Right.
your first movie, and now you have to be behind the camera hearing somebody else who probably hasn't won an Oscar because very few directors have. And then how would they feel being like directing you? And how much do you then want to put your own kind of stamp on things? Because you can see, and we already, your anecdotes about The Bodyguard, a movie he did not direct, nor did he write.
Mm-hmm.
He had a lot of creative control in that, making big decisions and make the movie work. Imagine that like as an Oscar winning director. Like I just don't know whether he would it's as easy to work with him, to no fault of him. It's just like how that dynamic to me would be weird. So I sort of see why that early taste of success with Dance with Wolves sort of put him on a different course where he's not going to be making JFKs anymore, which is unfortunate. I think his
It's
career,
too
if
bad.
he hadn't, if that movie hadn't been successful either commercially or critically, I think his career would have gone in a more interesting direction potentially. But I think, like I said at the outset too, like my thesis on him is just the culture moved away from the type of star he was, and in a quippy world, he doesn't really work. what can you say about the movie? Like for me, this is like a 10 out of 10, best edited movie of all time. Oliver Stone is one of my
Mhm.
favorite directors, his masterwork too. And I just love, even though it's 3 hours, I love coming back to this thing. And it was always just so powerful. I think one of the best movies ever made. I think
It's a
it's up
masterpiece.
there. It's just
Yeah.
so great. So yeah, if folks want to hear more about our thoughts on the film, like I'll post the link below to our thoughts on JFK more as a movie and less as the Kevin Costner vehicle. Hi there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I review a new release and then discuss 6 other movies made by that film's actor or director and how they shaped us. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.